Hi guys, Maverick Veteran here. My apologies for not seeing you in such a long time, but life has sort of overtaken a bit of activism because of everything that's going on. And I intend to talk about that over sort of the next 30 minutes, thereabouts, 30, 40 minutes. Try not to keep you too long because I'm very conscious that people get bored. So first thing I want to do, a job's come up and I need to get this out before I get carried away with everything else because I'll forget. And I've made a promise. Right, there is a company, it's called the Mansfield Group, and it's based in and around Birmingham. They require immediately class 1 and class 2 drivers. So that's HGV in old money, LGV in new money. If you want any details on it, if you think that you want the job and you're living in and around the area of Birmingham, Veterans for Veteran is the group to look at for further details. I have to give my thanks to Robert Campbell and Craig Burgess for bringing that to our attention earlier on today. So that's the Mansfield Group in Birmingham, looking for class 1, class 2 drivers. Tough job. Those that have done it, you'll know what the crack is. My heart's not in it anymore, and I'm too old for it now. So, but please investigate that. If you're in need of work, that would be a great job. Great rates of pay too. So it's been a tough year, 2020, because we've been hit with the China virus. And of course, then the process of looking for a viable vaccine. We've been hit with Black Lives Matter and Antifa that infiltrated the Black Lives Matter movement, and they trashed a few of our monuments. And they go on about the UK being inherently racist, which I find still to this day very hard to believe, because during my soldiering years, I worked with people of all colours and from all over the Commonwealth. And for me, they were amongst the best soldiers going. You know, they were tough. They set their sights on a goal and they went for that goal. And I think something that we've got to do in the new year is fight for these Commonwealth soldiers, because there's a lot of them that are not being allowed to stay within the UK without first obtaining visas. And visas are a lot of money, especially if you've got, you know, an entire family to get visas for. So it's something we need to look at. What else have we had? Immigration, of course, has been a big issue down there on the south coast. The US election with President Trump. Is he going to be the president? Is he not? Is it going to be Joe Biden? Joe Biden, for me, looks as though he's just about ready for the grave. I don't think he's ready to take on the responsibility of President of the United States. So it's still all to play for, in my opinion, and it's not over until the fat lady sings, as they say. No disrespect to fat ladies, but it's not. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. And then, of course, Brexit. And Brexit is an ongoing issue. Should have been put to bed by now. Yeah, we've got about a week and the deal or no deal should be done. So why it's taken so long, I don't know. It's probably part of the ever-growing smokescreen that this country, or at least this government, likes to throw up with us. So we've still got that to, I suppose, look forward to if that's the case. So today it's December the 21st. It's the shortest day. So in theory, after today, we're on the rundown towards British summertime again. Jupiter and Saturn are pretty much aligned at the moment. Only happens every 8 or 9 centuries, so I believe. Some people say that it's the second coming. Some people say that it's Lucifer setting his feet on earth. Well, perhaps he could come and take over the UK government. He might do a better job. But I guess if you want to look at it, look out your window, go outside. It's somewhere in the southwest. I've had a quick look tonight. I can't see it. It's too much cloud cover. If it is the second coming and you see 3 men walking down the street bearing gifts, then give yourself, perhaps a little bit of a thought. Are they social distancing or are they part of a social group? It seems to be the in thing at the minute. Christmas is cancelled for all intents and purposes because of this new strain of the China virus, COVID-19.1, whatever it is. It's so serious that even Chris Rea has turned his car. He's no longer coming home for Christmas. Now, it concerns me a little bit because Boris obviously put these lockdowns in place with a little bit more than a week to survive, if you like, before the Christmas period. And for many people that are in divided families, perhaps their parents have divorced, the kids live with mum, they go to dad's at Christmas. They can't do that now. They live with dad. They go to mum's at Christmas. They can't do that now. There are people that are terminally ill, and this could be their last Christmas. So by our government saying that this lockdown is so important that you mustn't travel out of your area or tiered area, I think they're walking a little bit of dodgy ground, to be fair. I understand that Boris may be in a difficult place and that he has to make a decision one way or other, but it's dodgy ground. And if I knew that I couldn't see somebody this year and the chances of them not being here next year was the reality, then I would break the law and go and see them, to be fair. Now, I know that Matt Hand-on-Cock said on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, I think it was, on Sophie Ridge, saying that it was irresponsible for people to escape London on Friday night before midnight. Well, irresponsible it may be, but it's understandable. And he needs to understand that himself. Because I'm sure, and we know, that there have been government officials that have made journeys illegally since March. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, is what I always say. Now, irrespective of what you think, irrespective of what government thinks, I think Bojo and the Brothers Grimm have some quite serious questions to answer, because I'll show you this. This was sent to me, and it was a request put through on the Freedom of Information Act. And it went through Merseycare. It's got the response reference number, etc., etc. It says, "Dear Mr. Thompson, the number of people who have died from COVID-19 without any pre-existing medical conditions is none." Now, that's on the 30th of November. So 3 weeks ago. Now, if that's the case, why are we concentrating so hard on this China virus, COVID-19? Surely we should just be protecting those that have got pre-existing medical conditions. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist or whatever you call them. I'm not a virologist, but it seems quite simple to me. And there's more and more people now speaking out about it, saying that we don't need to be following the line that we are following. So questions, I think, need to be asked, and we need answers to those questions. Now, yes, they're saying, and only 10 minutes ago I was watching Sky News, and they were saying, yes, it's a new strain of COVID-19. But at the same time, they're saying everybody knows that viruses do mutate every time they jump from one person to the next, because it adapts to that person's body makeup, their metabolism, their ability to fight off infections, if you like. So it doesn't really come as a surprise that it is mutating. And some of them have said on the news that it's already mutated several times. So why is it suddenly a big surprise? Boris knew about this in November. Why did he promise Christmas and then snatch it away with less than a week to run? Now, some things that nobody's talking about in the mainstream is where this virus has actually come from, and they're not linking it in geographically to anything other than it's our fault. We're moving around too much. We're not wearing our masks. We're not keeping our social distance. But nobody's actually saying perhaps it's connected to immigration. Now, for every 3 or 4 boats that are rounded up by the border force, at least one boat makes it to shore and the people scatter. Now, if those that are rounded up by border force are tested for COVID, fair enough, and then they're moved off to their holding areas. But those that make it to shore and have no contact with the police or border force, they scatter. And they're going to follow the corridor from Dover, Folkestone, etc., up towards London, the bright lights of London. Could immigration explain why all of Kent and the corridor up to London and the few areas around London are tied up in Tier 4? Is this an immigration issue? Is it being brought into the country by the illegal immigrants? We need these questions researched and we need these questions answered. For sure. It's also worthy of note that they had a spike down in Wales. Well, where are they housing a lot of these immigrants? South Wales. Looks like common sense to me. It's something that needs to be looked at, and it's something that the mainstream media perhaps need to start talking about and addressing, instead of blaming us Brits for everything. Now, whatever your thoughts on it, COVID-19, the China virus, coronavirus, call it what you will, it's created a big smokescreen. And this smokescreen is hiding other issues, such as veteran suicides, which are already at a higher level than they were this time last year. Suicides throughout the wider community, which are not being talked about, but we know they're going on. Northern Ireland veterans not being talked about. EU Military Defence Union, not being talked about. But I'm going to talk about them now, because inside of the last 2 hours, I've received some fresh intel from a very senior general, Army, Special Forces, and also from a government whistleblower. And it's important that I get this information out to you now, because mainstream media certainly aren't going to put it out there. Now then, in 2015-16, so a few years ago, the MOD put up a website page. And it basically stated what the rules were if you, as a veteran or a serving member of the armed forces, or even as a civil servant, could say if you were approached by the media. And it was put out on there and said, if you are approached by the media, say nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that included the prosecution of Northern Ireland veterans, EU Military Defence Union, or EU Military Unification, depending on your terminology. PESCO, as a lot of people call it, even though that's only one of the pillars. Do not respond, ignore it. If you get texted, ignore it. If you get asked in the street, ignore it. If somebody contacts you on the phone, ignore it. Well, as time's gone on, 4 years later, some of the very high up generals are asking where that website is now, and the advice that they were given by government and the civil service, including Stephen Lovegrove, you know, our friend, head civil servant in the Ministry of Defence. They're asking where that website's gone. Well, it's disappeared. It's being taken down. And that's probably because that can now be used as evidence, because a lot of the senior officers want to speak out and are speaking out, but they're being dumbed down by the government. And they wanted to access that website as proof that they were told to say nothing. But it's gone. But now you're aware that it did exist and that the government's taken it down. In addition to that, had a phone call today from somebody in government, whistleblower, talking about EU Defence Union. Now, some people may remember a guy called Oliver Letwin, and he was head of government and Tory policy, and he reigned, if you like, from Margaret Thatcher all the way through to Theresa May, so last year. And then he retired from government. Well, he suddenly popped up again, but he's popped up as a non-executive director of GB China Centre, which is a hidden office, if you like, within the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. So they deal with all things policy between Great Britain and China, including procurement. They're, if you like, a think tank, a lobbying group. they encouraged the UK and China to work closer together in all things, including defence. Now, just happen to have a couple of bits here. There's Sir Oliver Letwin, appointed Vice President of the Great Britain China Centre. Now, in addition to that, Lord Mandelson has been appointed the President of the Great Britain China Centre. In addition to that, Marina Wheeler QC, who is the ex-wife of Boris Johnson, in 2017 was the Master of Ceremonies, the MC, for the GB China Centre. But more recently has become a member on the board of directors for the GB China Centre. No surprise there then. So we've got somebody that was head of policy in the Conservative Party, now working for the GB China Centre. We've got two former prime ministers, and we've got the ex-wife of the current prime minister, all working for the same company. You can't make it up. Now, you may have heard that Skynet is taking effect. Skynet is basically satellites that are going to be in space, and they're going to control military communications, targeting systems, weaponry, things of that nature. Right? So we're now moving into the Terminator. If you remember those movies, it was Arnie Schwarzenegger becoming real. It's called Skynet. The equipment for that is being built by an Indian company called Mittal. Mittal are also connected to China. So we've got a China company building our space defense systems. Now, the people that are responsible for getting those satellites up into outer space is a company called Airbus, a subsidiary, Airbus Defence, which is a Franco-German company. And it's all there. It's all open source. You only have to go onto your web browser and you can find it all. Now, Airbus Defence were awarded by our government a $630 million contract in the last couple of months. Now tell me that EU military unification isn't happening, because it is, and it takes effect fully on the 1st of January, which is only, 2 weeks away. So we've lost our sovereign defence capability because China's now looking after us. The Franco-German companies are building our new tanks, our new satellite systems, and everything else that we need from a hardware, software perspective. And we've got two ex-prime ministers, a current prime minister's wife, and the former head of Conservative policy heading the whole bloody thing up through the GB China Centre, part of the Foreign Commonwealth Office. The same Foreign and Commonwealth Office that will not give our Commonwealth soldiers the right to stay here within the UK. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And something needs to be done about it. Because I've been going on about it for 6 years. People like David Ellis has been going on it for, what, 10, 12 years. Other people have been going on it for a lot longer. All the senior officers know it's happened, and they know that it's still going on, but they're not allowed to say anything because they're being dumbed down all the time. And they're being dumbed down by the civil service, Stephen Lovegrove, and other policymakers within the Conservative government. Wrong. We're currently barred from Europe because of this new strain of COVID. Shouldn't last long. Germans tried that in 1944. So good luck with that. You failed then, you'll fail now. Apparently lettuces are going to be hard to get. So what? All right, I'm a little bit disappointed. The fact that I'm not going to be able to get a lettuce because I like to wipe my arse with a lettuce when there's a bog roll shortage. But there you go. So what's our future? Well, next year, 2021, we need a more targeted approach. And what I'm thinking of is getting a committee together. Doesn't have to be a huge committee. Half a dozen at most people. Half a dozen veterans, half a dozen wider community patriots that can work together and have a narrow passage that we can go down and pick off targets as we go. So EU military unification, the suicides, the Northern Ireland vets, etc. So a committee that can coordinate all the other groups and make something happen for the good and the benefit of everybody within the United Kingdom. I'll give it some more thought. If you've got some ideas on it, please do let me know. Perhaps we could look at a change in politics. We've got the devolved governments. Wales as a government. Scotland as a government. Northern Ireland as a government. England, no government. We have to rely on these two characters to form policy on behalf of the English. I'm English. So I want somebody separate. So could we lobby and ensure that we get an English government? So you'd end up with an English, Welsh, Scots and Northern Irish government. And then at the head of that, you have our current parliament. So it's laid out similar in a way to the way the United States is laid out. That each state has a governor and they make state policy, but they're overseen by the President of the United States, who makes federal policy. We don't want to go down the line where we divide the UK up and everybody goes their separate ways, because that's playing into the EU's hands. And I think we played into their hands enough since the early 1970s. So we want to keep the UK together, but we want each country perhaps to have more autonomy. So perhaps we could look at that and bash it out, because at the moment it's only me that's thinking out loud in my own head, if that makes sense. If we did that, we could have common law would come back into play in a bigger way than it is now. We would have the Bill of Rights that we could use. So our constitution would once again be worth something, 100%, instead of it being pushed away all the time by our current parliamentarians. Now, don't get me wrong, when it comes to the Northern Ireland veterans, we need that Bill of Rights, because the Bill of Rights says that an individual has to be tried by a jury of his or her peers. And yet there's Dennis Hutchins facing prosecution in a court with only a judge and no jury. So that goes against our Bill of Rights. And we need to make a fuss, and we need to bring this Bill of Rights into play more. Because all of us here in the UK, irrespective of our nationality, we're getting the rough end of the stick, and it really needs to stop. So I'll have to speak to Graham more about it, because he knows lots about it, as do a lot of other constitutionalists out there. Whereas I'm behind on it all, to be fair. So give me your thoughts on that, whether or not we should form a community, some sort of committee, 6 or 12 people that can look at everything and push it forward and hopefully improve things for everybody. Right, just before I finish, I've got a message for the men. Look after the women. Look after the children. A message for the women. Covet your children and stand by your man. If you don't fit any of those two genders, well, I don't know. Just tuck up and do as you usually do, I guess. But stay safe anyway. So it's important. Whilst everything's going on in our country and around the world at the moment with the various smoke screens, that we look after one another. So please ensure you do. Make the best possible Christmas that you can. And let's pray in our own way to our own God, whoever that may be, to ensure that 2021 is a better year than 2020. It's going to start rough. That's guaranteed. But let's see if we can improve on it. Let's see if we can push things forward so that this time next year we can say we achieved something there. We've done something. As opposed to just going round the houses. Love you all loads. Stay safe. Don't suffer in silence. If you are struggling, get on the phone to somebody. Doesn't have to be me. Somebody. Just phone somebody and have a chat, because 9 times out of 10, that's all you need is a chat. Love you all loads. Speak to you soon. This call sign is out.